Tie your band in a knot about as wide as your shoulders, and you're gonna sneak your feet through that circle we've created. Put the band all the way up over your knees, and then lie down on your back. Your feet are gonna be parallel hip width distance apart, and we're gonna go into some bridging. So using your glutes and hamstrings, you're gonna lift your hips up toward the ceiling, and then inhale, lower down. Make sure you're not overarching the back. You're keeping the abdominals contained and the rib cage closed. Feel the shoulder blades flat on the back, and really open up the chest here without tensing in the low back. You want all 10 toes on the floor. The outer borders of the feet are parallel with the mat, and you're using your glutes and hamstrings to lift your hips up. A lot of people tell me they get knee pain, and this is a really great way to train the hamstrings and glutes so that your muscles in your knees are supported. Just a few more here, bridging the hips up and down, keeping the rib cage closed. If you feel anything in your low back, you can always keep your hips a little lower so that you are not hurting. Then from here, you're gonna keep the hips lifted, and you're gonna pulse your knees out for me, pushing out into the band. From here, same thing, lift your hips up and lower. We're lifting the heels. The heels stay lifted, and I want you to think of big toe and toe next to it, pushing down into the mat, and all 10 toes spreading out. So we don't want to put too much pressure on the big toe, and we don't want to put too much pressure on the baby toe. We want to find that platform right in between the big toe and toe next to it. And then your knees are tracking over your toes in line with your hips. Your abdominals are pulling in, and you're using your breath. You're exhaling to lift the hips, inhaling to lower. Really trying to engage the hamstrings here. Try to open up the collarbones and breathe. From here, you're gonna go ahead and get ready. You're gonna stay up, and we're gonna take little pulses out with your knees. Knees open and close. Really, really stay anchored through those big toes, big toe and toe next to it, and keep the rib cage closed here. Little pulses out. Exhale as you open. You wanna feel like you have a little dent in the side of your hips to open the knees. All right, let's add on. From here, you're gonna extend your right leg straight up toward the ceiling, still on your left toes, and you're gonna bridge your hips up and down here. You're keeping a little pressure out into the band so you feel that right outer hip and oblique working. It's gonna feel really uneven, and the work here is trying to even out the body. Exhale to lift, inhale to lower. Try to resist gravity as you come down. Feel the triceps push down into the floor, and really feel the abdominals working. You're gonna hold it here, same thing. Try to keep the pelvis level and pulse that leg out for me. You're working the outer hip on that right side. Keep the abdominals engaged and avoid having this go into your low back. Reset your right foot, extend your left leg, bridge the hips up and down. Exhale to lift, inhale to lower. When you're bridging, I want you to think about pushing your knee forward over your toes. So my right knee is trying to shoot forward over my toes and elongate my spine. You want to avoid pushing back into your shoulders. A lot of times that can create hamstring cramping, and it can create problems with the low back. So the more you can try to traction your spine forward, the better. Exhale to lift your hips, inhale to lower. Continue on here, and then we're gonna pulse that left leg out to the left, keeping the pelvis level, the abdominals engaged, anchoring through the triceps, and really making sure that right foot is staying in a good position. Replace the foot, roll on down for me. You're gonna lay on your side now. The band is still over your knees. You wanna make sure your bottom waistline is lifted, and we're going to lift both heels up. Rotate your top knee up toward the ceiling and back down. So when we do this, really think of your rib cage staying closed, and then I want your hand to be on top of your hip, because what will happen is we're gonna try and do this exercise by rolling the top hip back, You want to keep the top hip forward and imagine that dent in the side of the glute there where you're working that glute med muscle. Little pulses up for me. A trick that I like to use is spread out your baby toe on the top side. The entire musculature of the hips goes down the side of the leg. Once you've completed that, you're gonna go ahead and put the bottom foot down on the floor. Small circles, almost like you're tracing a little circle on a pane of glass in front of you. Really keep the top hip and waistline stable. Don't let the low back move around a lot. This is really good for helping to support the knee and foot and ankle alignment. You're gonna reverse your circles here. I like to inhale as I lift the knee, exhale as I let the leg circle down and around. The more you can strengthen the glutes, hamstrings, and hips, the better you're gonna feel in your knees and low back. Continue on here. Notice if you're holding any tension in your feet or your neck or your face. Circling around. Inhale up and exhale down. All right, push yourself on up and let's swing your legs around to the other side. So from here, bottom waistline lifts, ribs are closed, top hand on your hip. Make sure the hip bones are stacked. Lift both heels, rotate your top knee up toward the ceiling and bring it back down. You're really trying to isolate from that hip socket there. So make sure the low back isn't moving and engage those low abdominals. Exhale to lift, inhale to lower. Continuing on here, finding your breath, finding stability in the torso. When you are ready, you're gonna hold that knee up there, and we're gonna take little pulses back. We're trying to just isolate that femur bone. Feel the muscles in the side of the hip working. Put the bottom foot down, and we're gonna go into knee circles here. You're thinking about that thigh bone really stirring in the hip socket. So some people say it's like your thigh bone and your hip socket are like a mortar and pestle. Whatever works for you, just really getting that connection in the hip socket and that work in the glute. Reverse your circles, check in. Are your hips stacked? Is your bottom waistline lifted? Is your rib cage closed? Is your neck relaxed? And are you breathing? All of the things. Continuing to circle that knee up, around, and down. Notice where your foot is in alignment with your knee. A lot of times knee tightness can come from walking pronated or in different parts of our ankles. So we're gonna switch it up a little bit. You're gonna sit comfortably. You can sit up on a yoga block if you need. We're gonna take this band and put it over the forearms, palms face toward one another, and elbows and triceps parallel with the floor. And then from here, we're going to gently exhale as you push the arms out. Inhale, let it come in. So a lot of times, tight hamstrings and shoulders go together. So I wanted to help my friends who have tight knees, hamstrings, and hips. So a lot of times if we unlock one part of the body, we unlock another part, and it also helps us from getting fatigued. From here, you're gonna keep the elbows a little wider than the shoulders. Try to sink the shoulders down as you lift the arms up a little and down. Exhale to lift, inhale to lower. Something to be mindful of here is keeping the rib cage closed and keeping the abdominals in. Make sure you're not tensing the shoulders up. So only go as high as you can with your shoulders down. Hook your thumbs inside the band we've made here. You're gonna reach your arms up toward the ceiling, inhale down. I'm pushing out with my triceps and trying not to hyperextend my elbows. As you lift your arms up, sink your shoulders down. Imagine your shoulder blades melting down your back. So it's almost like your collarbone is an axis and your shoulders are running along a wheel, if you can imagine that. So I'm lifting the chest, abdominals pulling in, rib cage closed, and trying to get a little stretch along my upper back here. Exhale to lift, inhale to lower. Really keeping the work in the outer parts of the arms as I push out. Breathing here. getting that stretch, noticing if you have one side that's a little higher than the other. And there you are.